This week's Parsha is Parsha Chaye Sara. In the Parsha, the Torah tells us Va'avraham Zokein ba bayomim, that Avraham was old, ba bayomim, he came with all his days. What exactly does this mean? The Medrash tells us that it's possible that you can have a person who is old and not coming in days, and it's possible you can have a person who's coming in days but is not old. For example, the Talmud tells us about Rebbe Eliezer ben Azariah that he was as if he was a man of 70 years old, but in fact he was only 18. So in actual years he was young, but he looked old. On the other hand, you have many examples of people who are old literally in years, but they look young. So the Torah tells us that Avraham had both things. He was Zokein, he was old, and Bar Bayomim, he was old literally in looking and in days. That is the simple way to learn the Medrash. However, that is difficult, because Avraham Avinu, who was Echad Hoya Avraham, he was the first Jew, and he was the first one to spread monotheism in the entire world. It's difficult to say that when the Torah wants to describe his great spiritual level, it tells us that he was old and he was coming in days. There must be a deeper meaning to this expression. We can possibly explain it in the following way. When we say that Avraham Avinu was a Zokein, Zokein, explains the Talmud, is Zeh Kona Chochma. The word Zokein is made of two words, Zeh Kona. This one has acquired wisdom. It describes a person who has acquired wisdom, has made that acquisition of shleimus, of a certain level of perfection in their lifetime. When we say a person is bar bayomim, coming with days, what we actually mean is that that person has utilized all their days for mitzvah performance. That every single day of their life has been used to the fullest in the performance of mitzvahs. And hence, when we say that Avraham was a Zokein and bar bayomim, we can say that Avraham had both these levels. On the one hand, he was a person who had acquired a level of perfection in himself by acquiring wisdom. And on the other hand, he was also a person who utilized every one of his days in the mitzvahs that were pertaining to him in his day. Now, this is a tremendous lesson to each one of us. There are people who focus on acquiring a level of perfection for themselves. They work on the acquisition of wisdom, and they, in fact, become great people in and of themselves. However, what is lacking by them is their impact on the world. On the other hand, there are those who are active and engage in communal affairs. Nevertheless, they do not work on refining and elevating their own being, their own soul. Avraham Avinu was great in that he forged a path forward, embracing both these seemingly contradictory services. They seem to be a contradiction because every single person has limited time and energy, and if one is going to divert one's energies into acquiring wisdom, seemingly one will not have enough time for communal affairs, and vice versa. If a person engages in communal affairs, then they're not going to have enough time for acquisition of wisdom. Nevertheless, it was Avraham Avinu who forged the path forward that in fact we need to bring these two together in order to gain true perfection. This is what the Medrash means by saying that it was Avraham who started the 2,000 years of Torah learning. What does that mean? The world in the Jewish calendar is 5,771 years old this particular year. Avraham was born in the year 1948. In other words, when he was told Lech Lecha to go and start proclaiming the monotheistic belief, he already had entered into the year 2000. The Medrash tells us the first 2,000 years of the world was chaotic, it was tohu. The second 2,000 years started a process of the giving of the Torah, which started with Avraham Avinu, because he was the first one that started proclaiming monotheism and the belief in God, and it's culminated in the giving of the Torah. What does the giving of the Torah mean, and how did Avraham Avinu start it? There is a fascinating midrash which tells us that at the giving of the Torah, there was an annulment of a heavenly decree. In the words of the Medrash, there was a decree that the people of Rome would not allow to descend to Syria, and the people of Syria were not allowed to ascend to Rome. The decree was abolished, and the Romans could go down to Syria, and the Syrians could go up to Rome. What is the meaning behind this cryptic Medrash? Before the giving of the Torah, there was heaven and there was earth. There was spiritual and there was material. And there was a decree that the two could not be fused. At the giving of the Torah, God came down on Mount Sinai and Moses went up the mountain. There was a fusion of heaven and earth, of spiritual and material. From the giving of the Torah on, it was possible to embrace the physical, permeate it and elevate it and refine it with the spiritual, and in fact it would remain a spiritual entity. This process of bringing the two opposites of heaven and earth, the spiritual and the material, started with Avraham Avinu. And in our expression of being Zaken and Bar Bayomim, it exemplifies this particular avenue of service. That on the one hand, there is the spiritual, the acquisition of wisdom, perfection of oneself, and there is the material. There is one's impact on the world. Now, one may think that one can choose either one or the other. In fact, the people before Avraham Avinu's time were either of the category that they worked on self-perfection or they had an impact on the world. It was Avraham Avinu who blazed the way of the fusion of these two entities. And this is the eternal lesson for us and the lesson which the Parsha gives us. We cannot suffice with self-perfection, with acquisition of wisdom and becoming great in and of ourselves for our own soul. Neither can we just immerse ourselves in communal affairs and forget about working upon ourselves. The correct way forward is to do both together, is to fuse both the acquisition of wisdom and self-perfection together with the pursuit of engaging in communal affairs. And this is the way forward that every single one of us has, on the one hand, to study Torah, to toil in Torah and in the acquisition of wisdom, and at the same time to fully engage in the world and to embrace every individual's microcosm and elevate it and permeate it with spirituality, thus making a dwelling place for Hashem in this world.